Forget everything you think you know about trucks. This isn't about standard loads or efficiency. This is pure brute force, the territory where engineering goes crazy and says, how many cylinders? Make it 12. We're talking about machines that don't crawl along highways, but conquer deserts, crush mountains, and move tanks as if they were toys. They are the titans of pistons, the 12-cylinder beasts that redefined the limits of power. If you think a big engine is an 8-cylinder, get ready. This is the countdown of the 14 most enormous and powerful V12-powered trucks that have ever roared on Earth. Let's begin. Number 14. GMC Twin 6, the gasoline twin. In 1960, General Motors had an idea that could only have been born in an era of boundless industrial optimism. If one V6 engine was good, two together would be glorious. Thus was born the GMC Twin 6, a mechanical oddity that was exactly that. Two gasoline V6 blocks fused into a single crankshaft to create an 11.5-litre V12. It wasn't looking to break power records. Its 250 horsepower was modest. Its magic lay in its smooth, constant torque and a smoothness of operation that the rough diesels of the time could only dream of. This engine was designed for where reliability and predictable delivery were a matter of life and death, in fire trucks and heavy-duty service vehicles. Its roar was more of a civilized growl than a scream, but it delivered 585 pound-feet of torque with the elegance of a luxury engine. Its production was a brief flash, from 1960 to 1965, but that sealed it as a cult legend. Today, a working GMC Twin 6 is a holy grail for collectors, a reminder of a time when the most extravagant solution was often the most brilliant. Number 13. Fawn K40, the German resurgence. Post-war Germany had something to prove. Not only to rebuild itself, but to reaffirm its mastery of heavy engineering. The answer was the Fawn K40, a truck that looked like a rolling fortress. At its heart beat a Maybach MD870, a V12 diesel engine that spat out a solid 500 horsepower. This was no truck for hauling sacks. It was designed to transport abnormal loads, battle, electrical transformers the size of a house, colossal industrial machinery. The K40 was sophisticated for its time, with suspension and braking systems designed to handle the unspeakable stress of moving 100 tons over broken roads. It was a niche machine, built in tiny numbers for military and industrial customers who needed the impossible. Seeing a Fawn K40 today is like finding a polished steel fossil. Most live in museums or private collections of purists. It represents the resurgence of German engineering pride, channeled through 12 impeccable cylinders. Number 12. American LaFrance and Seagrave, the Serena V12. Before electronic sirens existed, the roar of an engine announced the arrival of heroes. Between the 1940s and 1960s, the most prestigious American fire trucks, the American LaFrance and Seagrave, did not rely on ordinary engines. They demanded greatness. They found it in V12 gasoline engines, often sourced from the now-defunct Pierce Arrow. With around 250 horsepower and monumental torque, these engines were not just power plants, they were instruments of trust. They needed to accelerate a multi-ton vehicle loaded with water, ladders, and men from 0 to rescue speed in seconds, in all conditions. The sound was part of their legend. A deep, penetrating roar that preceded the red lights, a mechanical announcement that help was on the way. They were single-mission machines, where reliability was sacred. Today, these trucks survive in parades and museums, not as dusty relics, but as monuments to an era when the fire truck was the most powerful and beautiful machine in any city, with a 12-cylinder heart to prove it. Number 11. International Transtar 4370, the scream of Screamin' Jimmy. The 1970s on American interstates had a distinctive soundtrack, the high-pitched, constant wail of a two-stroke Detroit diesel engine. And when that engine had 12 cylinders, the symphony became epic. The International Transtar 4370, a classic American cabover, offered the nuclear option. The Detroit Diesel 12V71, nicknamed the Screamin' Jimmy. With 434 horsepower, its numbers weren't record-breaking, but that didn't matter. This engine was a pure sensory experience. It ran at high revs with a metallic screech that could be heard for miles and generated torque that grabbed the load and wouldn't let go. Driving a Transtar with the 12V71 wasn't a job, it was a ritual. Drivers either loved it with devotion or wore earplugs religiously. It was the antithesis of efficiency, a glorious waste of sonic energy and raw power. In an era where personality was unregulated, the 12 V71 was the personality of the truck. Today, starting one up is an auditory time capsule. It doesn't purr, it howls, and to those in the know, that howl is the very voice of the old highway. Number 10. Tatra 813, the Czechoslovakian steel mole. While others sought horsepower, engineers at Tatra in Czechoslovakia sought something more valuable: invincibility. Introduced in 1967, the Tatra 813 Kolos was the definition of an off-road truck. Its engine, a 17-litre, 660 cubic-inch air-cooled V12 diesel, delivered between 250 and 300 horsepower, a figure that doesn't sound impressive on paper. But its genius lay not in raw power, but in the platform on which it rested. The T813 used Tatra's revolutionary spine chassis, a central tube that housed the drive shafts, combined with independent suspension on all wheels. This gave it supernatural flexibility and traction. Mountains, ravines, frozen rivers, sand dunes. The 813 traversed them all while carrying tons of cargo or towing heavy artillery. It wasn't fast, but it was unstoppable. Production lasted until the 1980s, but its legacy is eternal. Many are still in service today, proving that a well-placed V12 doesn't need 1,000 horsepower to be legendary, it just needs to be indestructible. Number 9. MAZ-530, the Soviet hammer. The Soviet Union didn't make engines, it made weapons. And in the late 1950s, they decided that what worked in a heavy tank would work in a mining dump truck. Thus was born the MAZ-530, a 50-ton beast that was less a truck and more a geopolitical statement on wheels. Under its enormous hood sat the D12A525, a 38.8-litre V12 diesel engine derived directly from the T-34 and T-54 tanks, delivering 450 horsepower. At the time, this made it one of the most powerful trucks in the Eastern Bloc. The cab was so high that the driver felt like he was on the bridge of a land battleship. Comfort was non-existent, fuel consumption was a macabre joke, it drank diesel like a ship, but its pulling power was absolute. It was built for Siberian conditions, to move mountains of ore in places where only survival and brute force mattered. Finding one today is like finding a Cold War fossil, and hearing the deep guttural roar of its V12 is like hearing the echo of an industrial philosophy that believed that size, yes, was the solution. Number 8. Isuzu 512 Heavy Series, Japan's silent monsters. When Japan decided to enter the ultra-heavy transport game, it didn't do so with fanfare. It did so with its characteristic obsessive meticulousness. In the 1970s and 1980s, Isuzu, known for its medium-duty trucks, unleashed a series of monsters under the designation 512. These trucks concealed V12 diesel engines ranging from 14 to 22 litres of displacement, capable of producing more than 500 horsepower in their most extreme configurations. But their virtue was not peak power, it was constant, unflappable and eternal delivery. They were designed for long-range work in torturous conditions, transporting extreme loads under the scorching sun of the Middle East or on massive infrastructure projects in Asia. The engineering focused on long-term reliability, on engines that could accumulate hundreds of thousands of miles of abuse without batting an eye. They never achieved the global fame of Peterbilt or Mercedes, but among operators who needed a machine to work to the ends of the earth and back, without drama, the Isuzu 512S were legends of silent and efficient iron. We crossed the threshold. What comes next is not an evolution, it is an arms race on wheels. We left behind charming engineering to embrace a pure obsession with scale and raw power. Here, horsepower is counted in the hundreds, torque is measured in wars against gravity, and trucks cease to be vehicles and become mobile infrastructure. These are the colossi that redefined what it means to be powerful, the absolute monsters where the legend of the V12 reaches its glorious and excessive zenith. Number 7. Detroit Diesel, F12 Series, the kings of two-stroke. Before talking about trucks, we must pay tribute to the heart that made them possible. The Detroit Diesel F12 series is not a model, it is a dynasty, a mechanical religion with the two-stroke as its doctrine. This family of V12s, ranging from the iconic 12V71 to the colossal 12V149, was the soul of heavy industry for decades. Its operating principle was simple and brutal. Each cylinder delivered useful power on every revolution of the crankshaft, not every two. The result was instantaneous, overwhelming torque and a high-pitched, unmistakable sound that tore through the air like a mechanical siren of productivity. The 12V71T delivered about 650 horsepower. The 12V92 was close to 800. But the king, the emperor of this saga, was the 12V149. In its most extreme versions, for industrial and marine applications, this 149-litre displacement monster could exceed, without complex turbos, the barrier of 1,000 horsepower. It wasn't just power, it was legendary reliability. These engines powered everything from the most desirable highway trucks to the largest mining giants on the planet. A Detroit diesel 512 didn't shut down, it got tired. And its fatigue came after decades of service. They were the undisputed kings of an era where the roar of an engine was the soundtrack of progress. Number 6. Pacific P12, the Canadian nuclear logger. In the impenetrable forests of Canada, where trees are as thick as rooms and mud swallows tractors, more than just a truck was needed. A tank with load capacity was needed. The answer was the Pacific P12, the ultimate embodiment of the off-road truck. This Canadian colossus wasn't pretty, it was pure function. Its structure, a steel beam frame that looked like it had been stolen from a bridge, was designed to withstand stresses that would destroy any other vehicle. And to move it, it usually carried the best of Detroit diesel under the hood. A 12V71, or in its most insane configurations, the Titanic 12V149. With up to 800 horsepower or more, the P12 didn't accelerate, it took off. It was built for specific superhuman tasks, transporting logs of biblical dimensions or entire sections of bridges. Its load capacity was so obscene that the mere act of braking was a feat of hydraulic engineering. The most revealing aspect of its legend is not its power, but its durability. Dozens of P12s, built 40 or 50 years ago, are still working today. They are not museum pieces, they are war veterans who refuse to retire, proving that when you build a machine around a V12, you build for eternity. Number 5. Jifang CA30, the Chinese wall of torque. In the 1970s, when China was awakening its industrial potential, it didn't want to participate in the race. It wanted to win it in one fell swoop. The Jifang CA30 was that blow. Not a truck, but a declaration of industrial sovereignty forged in steel. At its heart beat the Qingfa C2956 engine, a V12 diesel that produced 720 PS, equivalent to about 710 horsepower. For the time, that figure wasn't impressive, it was mind-boggling. A power reserved for the biggest Western monsters. This engine wasn't designed for efficiency or elegance. It was designed to move 105 tons of payload in quarries and mines, to prove that China could build the most brutal tool for the most brutal job. The CA30 was huge, crude and straightforward. Its cab was a watchtower from which the driver commanded a rolling fortress. It had no competition in its niche within Asia because it was not a commercial product. It was an instrument of industrial policy. It was not sold, it was deployed. It was the wall of torque that announced that a new power had arrived in the game of giants. Number 4. Tatra 815-7, the soldier of the apocalypse. The Tatra philosophy of invincibility did not die with the Cold War, it mutated and became more lethal. The Tatra 815-7 is the ultimate evolution of the concept, a military and rescue truck that looks like something out of a post-apocalyptic science fiction movie. Its heart is an air-cooled turbocharged V12 diesel engine capable of delivering up to 515 kilowatts, or nearly 606 horsepower. Again, the number is only part of the story. The magic is in the platform. The 8157 uses the brand's legendary backbone chassis and independent suspension, but taken to a modular and extreme level. Virtually all of its wheels are driven and steered. This, combined with the massive and constant torque of its air-cooled V12, impervious to freezing or overheating, makes it an amphibious land vehicle. It is designed for missions where failure is not an option, transporting missile systems across the Siberian tundra, rescue in disaster areas where there are no roads left, logistics operations in terrain that even tanks would not easily traverse. The Tatra 815-7 proves that the V12 is not an anachronism. It is an elite engineering solution, perfected for the most extreme challenges of the 21st century. Logistical operations on terrain that even tanks would struggle to traverse. It is the culmination of a century-old philosophy that traction and robustness are as vital as power. Its V12 engine may not be the most powerful in the world, but it is perhaps the most reliable when bombarded with mud, snow, or sand. In this vehicle, brute force finds a tactical purpose, making it not just a truck but a strategic mobility system. The Tatra 815-7 proves that the V12 is not an anachronism. Number 3. Berliet T100, the king of the desert. In the 1950s, France looked at the oil fields of the Sahara and decided that the existing logistics were inadequate. They needed a tool that could handle a continent of sand. Thus, the Berliet T100 was born, and for a time, it held the undisputed title of the world's largest truck. Its dimensions were out of this world, over 4 meters high and 15 meters long. Climbing into its cab required a literal ladder and was like entering the cockpit of a small airplane. To move this mass, Berliet turned to a 29.6-litre Cummins V12 engine that produced 700 horsepower. A figure that, in the context of the time, was science fiction. The T100 was not designed for roads. It was designed for the endless desert, to haul drilling rigs and refinery equipment across oceans of sand where there were no landmarks, only horizon and heat. Only a few units were ever built, making it one of the rarest and most prized legends. The Berliet T100 did not represent an incremental improvement. It represented a quantum leap in ambition. It was proof that when the challenge was big enough, the response had to be outsized, impractical, and gloriously excessive. In those oceans of sand where there were no landmarks, only horizon and heat. Its very existence was an achievement of will over physics, a logistical feat to facilitate other feats. With only 4 units built, every trip it made was an event. More than a tool, the T100 was a symbol of human defiance against the most hostile elements, where the only possible negotiation was through 700 horsepower and 30 liters of displacement. The Berliet T100 did not represent. Number 2. Mack Superliner, king of the highway. Before regulations froze growth, there was a brief, glorious moment when the American highway truck could be a god. And its throne was occupied by the Mack Superliner, crowned the king of the highway. More than a model, it was a blank canvas for the ultimate expression of power. Although it offered its own engines, its true soul beat when owners installed the Detroit Diesel 12 V92. This 12.1-litre, 2-stroke V12, in factory configurations or with tuning, could easily exceed the 800 horsepower barrier. Coupled with 18-speed transmissions, this engine made the Superliner the terror of hill climbs. It could maintain maximum loads at cruising speeds that left every other truck in the dust. It was the ultimate status symbol, the machine every trucker dreamed of driving and every owner wanted in their fleet to show off. It represented the pinnacle of the era of excess in road transport, a last roar of freedom and pure power before the federal limit of 80,000 pounds imposed its boring pragmatism. The Superliner with 12 V92 was not just the king, it was the last emperor of the open roads. Number 1. Caterpillar 797F, the Colossus of Mining. We have reached the pinnacle. The place where human scale ceases to make sense and we enter the realm of mobile geology. The Caterpillar 797F is not a truck in any conventional sense. It is a mining beast of burden, haul truck, a creature that inhabits the largest craters dug by man. Its dimensions are overwhelming, almost 7 meters high, 15 meters long. One of its wheels is taller than an adult man. But these figures pale in comparison to what lies beneath its monstrous hood, the Caterpillar C175-20 engine, a 106-litre displacement V12 diesel. I repeat, 106 litres. That's the equivalent of putting the engines of 16 large family cars together in a single block. This steel beast generates 4,000 horsepower and torque that can only be measured with seismic equipment. Its mission is simple: to move 400 tons of mineral rock on each trip, climbing 10% gradients on dirt roads. Fuel consumption is measured in gallons per minute. Its operator doesn't drive. He pilots a self-propelled steel citadel. The 797F is the ultimate expression of the V12 concept. It's not one engineering option among many, it's the only physical solution possible for a task of this magnitude. When you need to move a mountain, you don't design a truck. You design an engine that's almost a mountain itself, and then you build the simplest, most robust vehicle possible around it. The Caterpillar 797F isn't the king of this list, it's the god. The ultimate proof that when the job is truly impossible, the answer, the only conceivable answer, has 12 cylinders arranged in a V. From GMC's gasoline twin to Caterpillar's mining colossus, this has been a journey through the controlled psychosis of power engineering. We've traced the history of an obsession. The belief that any load, traction, or terrain problem is solved by adding more cylinders, more displacement, more controlled fire in more combustion chambers. These 14 titans prove that the V12 engine in a truck was never a matter of luxury or marketing. It was, and in its most extreme form still is, a matter of necessity. The need to dominate deserts, to conquer mountains, to move what logic says is immovable. These are machines that are not built to sell, they are built to dominate. They are the tangible, noisy and shaky proof that when the job is impossible, the answer always has 12 cylinders in a V. The next time you see a truck go by, remember, some don't carry cargo. They carry legends.